And then there was the Ndegwa family. You guys think so highly about the Ndegwa family because they own NIC and NCBA. But if you look, their father, who was once a central bank governor called Philip Ndegwa, was the chairman of that privatization commission or committee that was formed in conjunction with the World Bank and the IMF, so that we can be part of these structural adjustment programs, conditionalities for us to access loans so as to bridge the deficit that has been created by bad governance. So Philip Ndegwa becomes the chairman of the privatization commission. What does he first do? Anajichotea pesa zake. He first grabs a few companies. There was Nairobi Airport Services called NAS. There were many other companies which were grabbed during that period. But then you'll realize that the World Bank is hiding behind some of these government officials, and then they make it as if that, oh, we are selling these parastatals to clear our debt. But no, it is them who are grabbing. So during that period is when we saw the privatization of companies like Kenya Power. If you look at Kenya Power, since it was privatized, has our power bills, have they been cheaper or more? So the privatization was just a hoodwink. It was just a scam crafted for a few elites like Mamangina to grab our state-owned corporations. Look at Safaricom. During the same period, we had the Kenya Post and Telecommunications Corporation. Then, because of some mambo jumbo and magic over here, we were told it must be privatized. And so Safaricom was a department under the Kenya Post and Telecommunications Corporation. You understand? And that's where we have these clowns like Gideon Moi owning Mobitelea, 5% of Safaricom, given for free, under the guise that Vodafone is the one which is buying it. But Vodafone was giving 5% to Gideon Moi as a bribe because of acquiring Safaricom, which was a department of Kenya Post and Telecommunications Corporation. Look at something like Kenya Airways. We were told and we were fashioned. I remember I was reading the newspapers, I was very young, and they told us that privatization is a quick fix panacea, that because we are going to privatize, things are going to be better. Now, because the old generation of useless bastards, the boomers, if you are a boomer over here and you're there, you're a useless bastard, they bought into the idea of privatization. They bought into the idea of, oh, we let's get the golden handshake, and being stupid as they are, and even today they are still very stupid, they signed themselves up for a suicide. And so Kenya Airways, which was a fully state-owned corporation, has changed hands. It was sold first to KLM, and then there was this partnership between KLM, and then what they did is, now when they got to now the worst part, which was during the Uhuru era, they started selling our primest landing spots. For instance, Kenya Airways used to land in London at 6:10 a.m. There was a flight leaving Nairobi to London at 6:10. They sold that. They sold that to some, I don't know whether it's Bahrain or one of those companies or one of those countries. They sold that slot to bridge the deficit about debt that we don't know how it was incurred. We don't know how Kenya Airways got broke. We don't know how Kenya Airways got into debt, but somehow we have, because that is, your landing slot is almost like a sovereign parcel of land. You sell it, you concede it to another country to bridge problems that you yourselves have created. And so when we are talking about auditing debt, Jimmy Wanjigi is talking about odious debt. If we are talking about it, we are not just limiting ourselves to the debt. We are looking at the atrocities committed at the turn of the 80s to the 90s, where now that character, that clown called Philip Ndegwa, who was a central bank governor, who you guys are shamelessly praising today because they are rich, because you guys, your self-esteem has been suppressed. You are praising that clown, saying that they are rich, but they themselves stole their wealth is accrued. I used to read articles that Philip Ndegwa is rich. He was the first Kenyan to bank 1 billion. How are you banking 1 fucking billion? You have no manufacturing company. You're not a farmer of repute. You're not an innovator or inventor. And then you bank 1 billion. Where did you get that fucking money? These are questions when anytime we confront the ruling elite, we tell them, hey, can you tell us how you acquired this money? Because there was a time they used to flaunt their money. They used to flaunt these stories. Oh, I used to read those silly, nonsensical stories by somebody like Jenga Karume. Jenga Karume says, I used to sell charcoal. Who the fuck would believe that charcoal would make you a billionaire? Those are not, unless you're exporting that charcoal to Mars or to Jupiter as an alternative energy source. But we've been fed with lies. We've been fed with cock and bull stories pushed by the mainstream media, shameless journalists, shameless editors who have like you just run with any rubbish. You don't want to question how this person acquired this wealth. They were in government. They used to do X, Y, and Z, and somehow they landed into a lot of money. And because there were no checks and balances, suddenly they are billionaires and they are being praised. They are being worshipped by the church. We have the corrupt clergy. I see people are calling them kilaji. But this is the historical injustices that we have, especially from the economic front. It has to be all the companies that were grabbed by people hiding behind the narrative of privatization. The people who hid behind the narrative of a golden handshake. People were told, hey, you take a golden handshake, you'll go home. And by the time those guys were taking a golden handshake and leaving state-owned corporations, which were permanent and pensionable, they went to the villages and went to rot there to die.